Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, babies in their diapers, welcome to the Tiberius Show with your host, Tiberius Boy!
That's me, Tiberius!
And welcome to the Tiberius Show today, and I'm your host, Tiberius Boy! And as always, we're looking at various jobs and how they affect the world around us. Today's is going to be very interesting. We're going to talk to an architect. Do you have any idea what an architect does? Well, I think I do, but hey, let's talk to this guy and find out. Let me introduce our next guest, the one, the only, the amazing Chip Rusell.
Hey, let's do this thing. How you doing, Tiberius?
I'm doing pretty good, and thank you for being on the show.
Nice to be here.
So, you was as an architect. Can you explain to us exactly what that means?
Well, an architect designs buildings and designs residences and then works with people to make that place a little bit more beautiful. And I have a story to tell about that if you'd like to listen to it. Maybe. I have a background in working with a gentleman by the name of Neil Schweitzer. Well, no one knows who that is, right? No one's heard of that. But he was a protege of a gentleman by the name of Frank Lloyd Wright. You may not have even heard of him even. But Frank Lloyd Wright was one of the most famous architects probably in the last 200 years.
Wow.
Yeah. He's a very famous dude. Huh. He worked as a protege for him in what they call Taliesin School of Architecture in Arizona. He also was an Army guy who worked in the World War II. He happened to come across a very sad place called Birkenau in Auschwitz when he was in the Army. And by going through that terrible experience, this is where they had the camps for the Jews. They went in and he saw all this, experienced all this. And to make a very long story short, he changed his entire life because of this event. And he decided that he wanted to make the world a more beautiful place. So he went to school in Switzerland. He came back to America, and Frank Lloyd Wright sent him a telegram and said, "Come on." 2 words. So that was his invitation to become an architect and join his school at Taliesin in Arizona. So after that, he came back to America, to Florida, and he built something called Florida Southern College, which is the largest compilation of buildings in the world for Frank Lloyd Wright. Wow. Now, how did I become associated with him? Well, it was a really kind of an interesting story. Nils and Schweitzer's, they had an office building here in Orlando. Now, this goes back, I'm going to go way back in time. I'm going to put you in a time machine. We're going to talk about what we do in life and how that is done. What happens to you when you think about what you want to do in life. And I was 18 years old, and I decided, well, I think I want to be an architect. So I looked through the list of all the things you can do in the world. The first one was accounting. I said, I'm not going to do that. The second one was architecture. I said, that sounds really interesting because I had a lot of interest in that because I knew how to draw. I did it in high school, And so I decided that would be my major. So I went to school, became an architect, and then let's go forward about 70 years. Hello?
Hi.
70.
Wow. Okay.
That makes me an old dude. I'm like a fossil. So let's go forward and discover why that happened. Because I, at the time, did not know that your life can unveil before you without you understanding why. And what happened with me is that I discovered my background. My background was, well, I did some research. Okay. And I found out who I was from this background. And because I really never knew. My parents never really understood, and their parents never understood the background of where I came from. So let's go back. Let's zoom back to 1816. 1816, long time ago, 200 years ago. And this gentleman was born. He was my great-great-grandfather. His name is Samuel Peters Brown. He was born in Maine, a very cold place.
Yes.
And he went and became an entrepreneur. He's an entrepreneur. He went there and he did so many amazing things in his life. And all of the things that he did in his life mirrored what I do. He was an architect. He was a defense contractor. I worked for defense for many years. He did the same kinds of things that I do in my life. So DNA can give you your future,
That's true.
and you don't even know it. It was really exciting to be able to find this out. And the reason he became that, he was in around 1860. This is before the Civil War.
Yeah.
Just about when everything was started. He became a millionaire in the 1800s. Now, how do you become a millionaire in the 1800s? You have to have vision and foresight. So this is what happened. He bought land, about 50 acres of land in Washington, D.C., just north of the White House in Washington, D.C. He bought it from the vice president before Lincoln.
Wow.
So he was a Confederate. Do you know what a Confederate is?
No.
A Confederate. So back in the day in the Civil War, there was Confederate and Union. Confederate was south.
Okay, I see.
Union was north. He was in the Union. He bought it from them because that guy said, oh, the Confederates are going to win the war. He knew there was going to be a war.
Wow. Ouch.
Before the war happened, before the Civil War occurred. And he said, my land is going to be worthless because they're going to lose, and we're going to move the capital to Pennsylvania.
Whoa.
So this is what happened. So he bought the land, and he created a residential area just north of the White House. And he was an architect. He built his own home. He designed the land. He laid it all out. He did it all the work that was done.
Wow.
So this is why I think that DNA can help you understand what brings you and how you're able to become who you are without you even knowing about it. It's kind of it's really interesting. So Abraham Lincoln appointed him also as something called a naval agent. This is later on in my life. I became interested and got jobs with Lockheed Martin and Northrop Grumman Aerospace. He was a defense contractor in the sense that it was 1860 and 1862, after the war started, right? He supplied the Union Navy with wood to build ships and coal to fire them up and so forth. So he was able to do a lot of things in his life.
Okay, so let's get something up. Do
Yes,
you
sir.
make the instructions or actually build the buildings?
What you do when you're an architect, right? You work with the client. The client being the owner of the property, and they say, "Oh, I want to go ahead and I want to build EPCOT Center," for example. That was the first
that's
big job I worked on. At that time, it was the largest construction enterprise in the world. It was a multi-billion-dollar construction, and it was in 1980. Well, it's a long time ago. So in 1980, we started, and I worked with a gentleman by the name of Neil Schweitzer, as I mentioned before, and he worked with Disney, and we got the commission to build what they call the Mexico Pavilion. It's one of the pavilions at Epcot Center. And so what happened is that we went in and got that job. We all then were very excited. We popped the champagne corks. We got in a Jeep wagon here and drove out to Epcot Center, which at that time was nothing but a mud hole. It was a mud hole. They had a giant crane in the middle of the lake. They were dredging the lake out, and it took them like 5 years to do this.
Wow.
And they dredged out the lake, which is there, and they pumped all the water up the slope and let it drain back down. And our building was a giant pile of dirt. Why was it a giant pile of dirt? Well, if you become a civil engineer, you might understand why. Because as they drained the lake, that pile of dirt began to go down, and it was compressing the soil.
Oh, gosh.
So that we could put the building on a firm foundation. So that's what we did. We have designs from Disney, and we took those designs and we started to draw. And we draw up all of the details and how the ride would work. And so one of the main things that I did was how did the ride work? And how do you put a ride made by WED Engineering? Do you know what WED is? WED.
No.
W-E-D. Stands for Walter Aloysius Disney. That would be Walt Disney.
Yeah.
Okay. So Walt Disney, they have a whole engineering team, and they build everything Disney. All of the animatronics, they build the design for the ride. And so we took that design and we put it inside the building, and it was actually done as what they call a survey, a closed survey. What does that mean? That means you would, mathematically, you would start at one point, you would draw a line and curves and go around the whole building, and then at the end, you close the survey and it's perfect. Mathematically.
Yeah.
And that's the way they built the thing.
Well, what's the best part about working as an architect?
The best part is figuring out problems. That's what I like to do.
That makes sense.
So it's a big challenge to figure out what to do and how to do it, and the best way to proceed. It's a really challenging and mindful thing that you have to think about, and you do a lot of thinking when you're trying to design something.
Okay.
And speaking of design, what does that mean? Maybe people don't understand what design means. But if you understand what design means, it means to go back to the ancients. What do I mean by the ancients? If you look at the Parthenon, if you look at like different things that the Greeks and the Romans built, they built everything based upon the Golden Triangle, which is an irrational number. You might know about that.
Yeah.
Which is
Golden ratio. Right?
you know what an irrational number?
Well, yeah.
One of them is pi, yeah.
Infinite
So
number.
exactly,
People
right.
don't
So
right now.
all of those things are based upon nature, and the reason why those buildings are still standing after 2,000 years is the fact that they are they're very pleasing to the eye, and they're built very differently. Now, the other day, I saw a flyover of the Parthenon and of Roman architecture and something called Roman concrete. I took a very heavy subject when I was in architecture school. It was called concrete. Sorry, did that go right? It was a joke. Sorry. Anyway, so so that was a very interesting thing, because if you think about it, that concrete is 2,000 years old, and it looks like it was poured last week. If you do that today, you will then have the ability to understand why Roman concrete has not been able to be replicated after 2,000 years. It's a lost art.
Well, now here's something a good time to take a quick commercial break. Let's hear a word from our sponsors.
Over 40 years, Lighthouse Central Florida has provided education, independent life skills, and job training to thousands of Central Floridians who live with blindness or any degree of vision loss. Whether it's picking out clothes in the morning or just moving around your community and serving Orange, Seminole, and Osceola counties, contact Lighthouse Central Florida at 407-898-2483 or visit them online at lighthousecfl.org.
And we are back here talking with Chip Russell. Chip is an architect as well as an author. Okay, so what kind of skills do you need to have in order to be a successful architect?
Oh, wow, what a question that is. Someone asked me that the other day, as a matter of fact. He says, what do you need? How do you be an architect? And the answer is, well, when you go to school, when I went to school, you have to learn a lot about everything. It's a strange thing. You have to learn about not only how to draw, you have to learn. Now, I learned how to draw with something called a pencil.
Yeah.
Today, you learn how to draw with a computer. Everybody that's an architect uses something called AutoCAD or something of that nature to draw and create items with, even use AI today.
Oh, yeah.
But if you learn how to use those tools and understand what design is, now there's another part of understanding what design is, and that's something that I think I mentioned before, was that you have to learn about what is design as the ancients did. And that's a very timeless thing to understand. How do you create relationships between spaces and relationships between, not only in plan, but in elevation? What do I mean by elevation? In plan, it's like you're in an airplane and you're looking down at something. In elevation, you're looking at the front of a building or a side of a building. So those are the things you need to understand. Now, you need to also understand what philosophy is and how does philosophy interact with architecture. And what we did, we learned, the Frank Lloyd Wright way, which is, we learned how to incorporate nature with architecture. There's one building that Frank Lloyd Wright did that you might want to look up on the internet, and it was called Falling Waters. It is probably one of the most beautiful residences in the world, where it looks like the building is a part of a waterfall. And he built that structure as something that's quite amazing, and it's very famous.
Okay, so do you design whatever you want, or do you have someone telling you how they want it?
Well, that's a good question. How would you approach that? People have requirements, so you have to understand what the requirements of the owner is. Like today, just this morning, I was with a client. We're building just a simple 1-bedroom, 1-bathroom lanai addition. What's a lanai? You ever heard of that one? And that's a really cool little place where you can chill. It's like an open area, but it's closed on the overhead, and it's really very, very pretty because we have to build different materials to make a great place to chill out and relax.
Okay. Now, you were also an author. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Sure. My wife, we've been married now for 3 years. She's from Vietnam. My wife is from Vietnam, and this is a story about her journey from Vietnam to America. So I learned, and I took about a year and a half to write the book. She told me his story. And she had some really strange stories about her life, about her living in the jungle. The name of the book is Jungle Child, Born in the Jungles of Vietnam, because she was born in Vietnam in the jungle. It's a very inspiring story because it tells about her life.
How do you balance your time between designing buildings and writing?
Well, I'm my own boss, so I decide when I could write and when I can do architecture. That's a very interesting point. That's a really great question because it all comes down to this. Do you want a job or do you want to work for yourself? Do you want to be an entrepreneur and work for yourself and define your own time, define your own limits, or do you want to work for a job and they tell you what to do?
Okay. Now, who helped motivate or inspire you the most in following your dreams?
Oh, well, that's a good question. When I started working and sort of settled down in the profession and understood who I was working with, which was this gentleman by the name of Neil. He was my mentor. If you have a mentor in life, It's very important. Anybody, no matter how smart you are or what your position in life, even if you're older, younger, you need to have a mentor. And so Nils was my mentor, and I had him for 5 years and before he died, unfortunately, but I did have him for that time.
So how do you think architecture makes a positive impact on the world?
It's very important. There is so many things that architecture is important about. You know, the world is a very messed up place sometimes. You know, there's a lot of things going on in the world, and the main purpose of architecture is to make, you know, the world a more beautiful place.
Can you share a memorable moment from your career that you will never forget?
Oh, well, that was when we finished up at Mexico Pavilion, and we were standing there with one of the artists and with Nils, looking upon the finished product. Going from a project like that that's very complicated and from a mud hole basically to a finished product is quite an experience that I will
sure.
never forget. It was awesome.
What's the hardest thing about being an architect?
Probably the hardest thing about being an architect is the business end of architecture. You know,
Okay.
you have to understand business and how to run a business.
What can be done to make business easier?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, what can be done to make that easier? I think that, you know, architects seemingly focus on doing the job, doing the technical part, doing the design. That's where the passion comes in. So it helps to have a good office manager. I guess you could say, right?
What's the craziest thing that has happened while you were doing your passion?
The craziest thing that I was doing my passion. Oh, I'm not sure if I can answer that one.
Really?
Yeah, well, you know, I guess getting in that Jeep and going to Epcot Center and running up a 30-foot mountain of dirt.
Jeez.
And with 6 people in the car, we were crowded
Running
in.
up?
Yeah, we're running. So the guy gunned it. We're in a Jeep, Wagoneer, 4-wheel drive, and we gunned it up the side of this mountain of dirt. It's like 30 feet high. That's like a 3-story building.
Yeah.
And it's flat top on the top. And we got out of the car and they said, "This is where your pavilion is going. And this is what it looks like now.
Yeah.
So remember that. So when it's finished, you understand what you've done." That was crazy. That was really crazy.
That's big. So if someone wanted to work towards being an architect for a living, what should they do first?
Well, understand what your passion is. Understand that you love to draw and you want to create beautiful things. That's where you can derive your passion and understand how to make your life a little better.
Well, can you provide an example of a situation that didn't go as planned and what you learned from it?
Yes, I can. But it kind of doesn't have to do with architecture, but it's something that happened to me in college when I was a photographer. I was a photographer. I like photography. And we were photographing some really very lovely ladies. It was kind of fun. And we were on a dock on a boat, and I'm standing there, and I said, "Wait, I have to get back a little further, a little further, a little..." And then I fell into the water with a $2,000 Nikon in my hand. and I kept falling, and the water went above my head. It was crazy. So it's like, I was like, and then everybody was going over the side, grabbing me, and they pulled me up out of like a wet rag. So that was kind of embarrassing, but things happen in your life. Yeah.
What advice would you give to my listeners if they wanted to go up and work as an architect?
Oh, I think is really what to do is to find your passion. Understand that you like to draw. You like to see things that are more beautiful. You want to make the ability for people to understand that what you do matters, and you'll make the world a more beautiful place. You need to study at a good school that's qualified, like Harvard, but Boston Architectural College is a pretty good school. And, you know, you go to a good school, you go through 5 years of education, and then you take your test, and it's sort of like becoming a doctor. It takes that long, There's a lot of work that you have to do.
Interesting. What's the best advice you've ever received?
The best advice I've ever received.
Really? Huh. What was the very first job that you've ever had?
Oh, the very first job I ever had was right here in Orlando.
Really?
I got out of school. I came down to Orlando. I went to the unemployment office because I wasn't employed.
Okay.
I went to the Altamont Mall. Behind the Altamont Mall, there's a little office park.
Okay.
I stopped my car right in the middle of the street, and I saw this sign. It said architect on it. I went in, knocked on the door, opened the door. I said, "Hi, are you looking for someone to help?" And they said, "Well, yeah." And they told him where I was from, what I did. He says, "Do you have your resume?" I said, "No, I have a portfolio." You know what a portfolio is,
Yeah.
right? Okay. So I brought my portfolio. It's a big thing. It's giant. And I laid it on the guy's desk and opened it up. The guy's name was Oru Bose. He's an architect that's been around for many years. As a matter of fact, there's a story that goes along with it. I'm not sure if you want to hear it or not, but the story was about my friend who I met just this Christmas. He was educated in Oxford, in England, and he came over to America at 35 and wanted to become an architect, and he couldn't get licensed because he didn't go to an American school, even though he was educated architecture from Oxford and practiced architecture in England. So he started working for a very big firm, and he was too old to go back to school again, and they did all of the licensing for him, but he worked all over the world, right? But Oru Bose, he knew him.
Okay.
From that point, I said, "Oh, I know him," and he's a world-renowned architect today. He actually built Disney Springs, and that was my first job that I got, working for him, and we worked at Disney Springs and developed the concept design for what used to be Lake Buena Vista, and is now in Disney Springs.
Okay. What message do you want to tell children all over the world about doing the work that you do?
I think that if you want to become an architect, understand math, understand how to draw, understand your passion, and
The Tiberius Show would like to thank one of their dedicated sponsors, Custom Designs Orlando. These guys are on Mills Avenue and do all sorts of stuff, ranging from photo ID badges, engraved signs, custom braille ADA signs, vinyl lettering to trophies and awards. The cool part about Custom Designs is they can ship products all over the United States. You can reach them at 407-898-0373 and tell them that
Tiberius
sent you.
make the world a more beautiful place.
Well, on that note, let's take a quick break to pay some bills. And we are back here with architect and author Chip Rusell. Now, Chip, what was your favorite part of your day?
Waking up.
Okay.
I think that if you wake up with a positive mindset, wake up and understand that, wow, this is a new day. God's given me a new day to live. So I'm very excited about my new day and what I have planned for the day.
Okay.
That's a great thing.
So what do you want people to take away or feel when they look at your building?
Well, it's a point of living in a space that you enjoy. The client that I'm working with now, I'm very excited about it. It's not a very big job, but it's going to change their entire life because it gives them a place to settle in at the end of a hard work day and enjoy their life a little more.
Okay. So, if you could go back in time, would you select the same career or would you try something different?
No, I would not change a thing. I would actually focus a little more on what I do because I worked on architecture for a number of years, but then I got a call from an aerospace company. And they said, "Will you come to work for us?" And I said, "Oh, well, I'm an architect." He said, "Well, yeah, well, you'll be doing architecture." I said, "Okay." And then they decided to give me a giant pay raise, and I said, something like you can't refuse, right? So I started working for them. But their type of architecture is very kind of boring. What they do isn't boring because, the code that you have to work with is the ATF code. Alcohol, tobacco, and firearms. So we had to build bomb shelters that are specifically designed a certain way, which is a little different than building Disney Epcot Center.
Yeah,
a little
I think
bit.
So.
Yeah.
What was the biggest mistake that you've ever made, and how did it change as a person?
How do you change it as a person? What is the biggest mistake I ever made? Well, I'm not sure. Just making decisions in life that sent me in a wrong direction for a few years. Yeah.
Okay. So when you're not working, what do you do for fun?
I like to go out and relax, go out to dinner, go out see a movie, go golfing a little bit. I like golf.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, do you play video games? And if you do, what is your favorite one?
I am not Elon Musk. I do not play video games. I am sorry, but not even on my phone.
Really?
Well, there's one game that I play. It's called Pi. It's kind of a game where you're building Bitcoin.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just,
I think I know what you're talking
yeah,
about.
you
Yeah.
do. You do, huh?
Yeah,
Okay.
a little bit. I have the same app. Now, what's your favorite book to read?
I think The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. That's one. Have you ever played? My little boy played Edmund in The Lion and the Witch and the Wardrobe. You know Edmund?
Yeah.
He's the main character. So we're right here in Maitland, the little church down the way, and I was the director of the play when he was a little kid. Boop. And that was a lot of fun.
I'm sure it was. Okay. Can you tell me that one story? Remember, this is a kid's show. But that one story. Well, that you're not supposed to tell me about. Come on, you can tell me.
Well, Dan, we all know that we have one life to live.
Yeah.
And this is really not an embarrassing story, but it's a story that was very momentous in my life because I almost died.
Really?
I almost died. I felt a little funny. This was on 2019, October the 31st, Halloween.
Ooh.
Halloween.
Oh, gosh.
Halloween. And I said, I'm feeling a little weird. And I went downstairs. My neighbor is a doctor. I ran downstairs. I saw him come in, park his car. I ran over to him and I said, I'm feeling a little weird. What's going on? He took my pulse. He looked me straight in the eye and he said, go to the emergency room right now.
Wow. Why?
I didn't know. I said, okay, I'm on the way. So I went to the emergency room. I told them what happened. They put me in, they hooked me all up, and they read my pulse was 27 beats per minute. Do you know what your heart rate is? Normally?
Like 100 or something, right?
No, it's about 60. If you are an athlete, perfect condition, maybe 55 or 50, because an athlete has got a low heart rate. But mine was 27. Like, I'm almost seeing heaven. And they hooked me all up, and then the funniest thing happened, and they hooked me all up. They rushed into the hospital room with crash carts, all these nurses. There was like 15 nurses in front of me. I said, hi, ladies. And I'm talking to them like I'm normal. I didn't feel any pain. Nothing was wrong. Wow. And they said, your heart rate is 27. We were going to give you a defibrillator, where they go, like, clear, when they hit you.
Yeah.
And so that happened to me. And it was hilarious because They all thought I was dying, and I was talking to them like a normal person.
I feel fine.
It's kind of weird, but anyway.
Well, is there anything else you think my listeners should know about you?
Well, I think that your passion is where you want to drive your life and have fun while you're doing it. I've always had fun doing what I do in life, and it's the best thing to go ahead and do what you want to do in your life and have fun doing it.
Okay. So what is your Facebook page or website for those listeners that want to follow you?
Yeah, I have a Facebook page. It's Chip Rusell, or Thoburn Russell is my actual name, and I'm also on Instagram. I'm also on other
Okay.
things. Yeah. So.
What is that one question that you think I forgot to ask you?
Oh, well, let's see. Well, we talked about old great-great-granddad, and we talked about my mentors. And I think that if you want to be successful in life, I meet a lot of people that are younger, and they think they know everything. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But if you find a mentor that can help you and you're open to them, be humble. Be humble and understand that when you're humble, people respond to you better and they like you more, and smile. Smiling is a good thing. So I appreciate you. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Chip, for being my special guest. Can you stick around for Math Corners?
Sure.
Sweet.
Tiberius' favorite subject, it's Math Corners!
And thank you, Chip, for helping me with Math Corners. This week, we are going to do some more multi-step word problems. My dad is always good at finding new problems for me to solve. Today, we're going to talk about siblings.
Siblings?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so Samantha is twice as old as her younger brother. The sum of their ages is 27. How old is each of them? Well, first, this is a real world problem because there are tons of people who are siblings who do things together. But normally, you don't need algebra to find out their ages. I mean, you could just ask them. Okay, so to solve this with algebra, first let's denotate Samantha's age as S and her younger brother's age as B. First, Samantha is twice as old as his younger brother, so S equals 2B. The sum of their ages is 27, so S plus B equals 27. Now we replace S with the 2B, so 2B plus B is 3B. So 3B is 27, which 27 divided by 3 is 9. So if Samantha's younger brother is 9, then 27 minus 9 is 18. So Samantha's 18. So Chip, do you have siblings?
I do. I have a sister.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
She's much older than me.
Wow.
And she's still alive.
Okay. Now, Chip, my teacher said that I would use math every day. How do you use math?
Oh, wow. I use math every day. You know what else I use? I use Bard. You never heard of Bard?
No.
I suggest you look that up on the internet.
Okay.
Bard is AI.
Okay.
I use AI every single day of my life.
That makes sense. AI is used a lot.
Yeah, but do you realize most people don't understand because you have to use AI. You can ask it questions, but you have to know the questions to ask.
That's true.
You have to ask it very intelligent questions so that you can understand what the answer is.
Yeah, I know. Well, thank you so much, Chip, for your help with Math Corners.
You're welcome.
And now it's time for the heart of a lion. As you know, we talk about the qualities of living by the heart of a lion, which stands for leadership, integrity, obedience, and nobility. This week, we're going to talk about integrity. For me, I think integrity is doing what is right, even when no one else is looking. The qualities of integrity is honesty, sincerity, truthfulness, and fairness. This week at recess, one student shines as a person of integrity. Owen, an 8th grader who consistently demonstrates honesty and fairness on the playground. Recently, during a spirited game of kickball, a contentious call arose when the ball bounced off the edge of his foot. Despite the pressure to claim an unfair advantage for his team, Owen promptly owned up to the accidental touch, insisting the opposing team make their rightful place on the bases. His peers watched, well, some not so happy, but others in admiration of Owen's commitment to fair play, and became a beacon of integrity on the dusty green space. Through his actions, Owen not only upheld the spirit of the game, but also fostered a culture of honesty and sportsmanship that resonated throughout the space, leaving a lasting impression on his classmates. Well, Chip, did you see or use integrity at all this week?
That's, I think, the most important thing you'd ever do in your life is integrity. Be be honest.
Yeah.
Honesty is the most amazing quality you can have in this world. And it's very a rare find today, I think. What do you think? You think, I mean, do you think that adults are honest? Maybe not.
Sometimes not.
Sometimes not.
Most of them aren't, especially around this time of year.
Yeah. We'll not go into that, okay?
Yeah, we won't go into that.
We don't want to talk about that.
All of the heart of lion virtues, which is the one that you see the most?
I think integrity is something that lives with you every day, and it's part of your past. It's who you are, and how you develop that is with being honest throughout your whole life.
Well, we should always try and be lion strong in everything we do, shouldn't we?
We should. Yes, sir.
And that's our show, folks. I want to thank the one, the only, the amazing Chip Rusell for being on my show. It has been so much fun talking to you today. I think we learned a lot about being an architect, designing buildings, and your voyage of writing a book.
Well, thank you, Tiberius. I appreciate your help,
No problem.
and it was a lot of fun.
Do you mind giving your social media and website?
Sure. My website is jungle-child.com, and my Facebook is Jungle Child, born in the jungles of Vietnam. So I hope you enjoy.
Okay, and also you can find me on Facebook and Instagram at The Tiberius Show, and I would like to thank WWPR 1490 AM, KNNT 98, Soul Radio 24/7, Easy Way TV, and all the other stations that air my show. Please be sure to visit The Tiberius Show on YouTube and hit that subscribe button. Chip, have you subscribed yet?
Of course.
Sweet. Oh, and leave a comment if you want to be an architect. Also, you can be listening to us next week on The Tiberius Show with your host, Tiberius Boy.